we pressured the city around putting money into Sanborn Park and pressured them to repair the swimming pool, of which they told us for 2-3 summers the pool was scrapped. And I just got fed up with seeing kids passing my bay window in triple-degree heat with no outlet. So we waged a battle around getting that swimming pool opened. And when I met, the day I met with, the NOR director's name? Vic Richard in Lower 9, and he had the maintenance men out there. They told me, Ms. Gueringer, there's nothing wrong with this pool. This pool is not cracked. So the city had told my community for 3 years after that storm that the pool was cracked, when it wasn't. So they immediately went to work on the pool. Eventually they did new equipment. A whole slew of volunteers came in and they did picnic benches and receptacles. The Hornets have painted the awning. They're gonna restripe the basketball court and put up goals and netting. Now mind you, I've been asking about these goals and nettings the entire summer, because I've had kids knocking on my door saying, Ms. G, what's going on with the basketball goals at Sanborn Park? For some reason, the city decides that they're going to turn that over to capital projects, which is insane to me, okay? But anyway, we're still waiting for goals and netting. Oliver Bush, which is the largest park in the Lower Ninth Ward, is being redone. Now, mind you, before Ernie Philco left, and before all the stuff with John went down, there was a commitment in the beginning that there was going to be $2 million worth of work done at Oliver Bush Park. For some reason, John has a meeting and the money is reduced to $800,000. And I asked the question, why? I could get no clarification as to why the money was reduced to $800,000. So I get a call from Ernie Philco one morning saying the money's been reduced to $700,000. So I get dressed and I go down to City Council and I call them out and I say, how could this money be reduced to $700,000 when the mayor had put out his list of committed projects and is saying that this park is going to get over $2 million worth of renovations? How could that be? Nobody gave me a clear answer. So it was a constant battle, calling him out for a year about this money. Now mind you, when I went to these, the thing is, with the NARD monthly meetings, any person that's involved with recreation, your best bet is to go to the subcommittee meetings. That's where decisions are made and conversations are had. Pretty much when the NARD meeting is taped, Cox Gable, the monthly meeting, pretty much everything is decided before they even come. So at the subcommittee meetings, I found out that Berman was getting an $11 million soccer stadium that didn't even exist pre-Katrina.
Unflooded neighborhood.
Unflooded neighborhood, okay?
On the west bank.
Corral has got money hand over fist, constantly, you know, from Lil Wayne, the city, and everybody else, just constantly.
That's uptown?
It's
County?
near the Jefferson, Orleans Parish line. It's like when you go into the Lowe's up there, you see storage of water board, vats and stuff like that. So I fought them and fought them and fought them. So finally, they relented and said, we're gonna do $2.1 million worth of work on this park, finally. So the mayor came down, a council person came down to make the announcement. I went over, and immediately when I got there, the comments I heard was like, here comes trouble. Here comes trouble. So, needless to say, I was the picture that they took of me between the mayor and John, they were absolutely nervous as a cat. The mayor came with his prepared agenda, of which he spoke nothing of mine or our fighting them. But Vic Richard, who became a friend of mine, Vic Richard came out and said, you know, I want to thank Ms. Gueringer, you know, the community for all the hard work they've done in fighting to get this park restored. You know, so there's going to be a ribbon cutting. But I'm a little upset right now because the NFL, the NBA raised $25,000 for Oliver Bush Park. There was to be an event at that park this Saturday, a basketball clinic from like 2:30 to 4:30, food and fun from 12 to 2. And it's going to be 100 retired NBA players at this park. I get a call from his head's office that, well, guess what? It's not going to be at Oliver Bush because the park's not going to be ready. So now it's going to be at A.L. Davis in Central City. So I said to them, why? Because I don't want the folk uptown to think that they're going to be the beneficiaries of this check. And again, our kids are being slighted. These kids uptown are going to have a great time at this event, and our kids are going to be left out. So we went back and forth about it, and I talked to Ernie, called me, and he tried to call me and tell me, you know, you know, we're going to come back, and we're going to have another clinic, and all this kind of stuff. But I just think it's just so unfair. And I asked him point blank, and he confirmed. The reason why, it wasn't that the park wasn't going to be ready, because I drive back there every day. And all I saw was parts of sidewalks that needed to be poured. The thing was, the mayor did not want this event to overshadow the ribbon cutting at that park. So it got moved to A.L. Davis. But I explained to Ernie, why couldn't you have looked at the parks and playgrounds in District E, in New Orleans East, at Digby, or some other park in the East? At least it would have been in our district. But it's not. It's going to be uptown.
There's a mythology about how many kids are on the lower ninth ward. Do you have any indicators on that?
Well, we have about roughly 5,000 or 6,000 families. You know, we have a waiting list at King's School of over 500 kids at that school. So that gives you somewhat of a barometer of kids in the lower ninth ward. Of course, there's a lot of kids that's bused in from other areas. And that was a bone of contention with us with the RSD, because we're saying as people come back, there's no neighborhood schools for them to attend. So our kids are being bused all over the place. 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, if you come to the lower ninth ward and it's dark, you see little kids scurrying around like mice in the darkness, getting to these bus stops at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, riding 2 and 3 hours to get to a school outside of our area. When FEMA gave the state $94.1 million for our area. And they took all the money and they went uptown and everywhere else.
Algier.
And they didn't put any schools in the lower ninth ward.
You mentioned uptown a couple of times, and my wife had outed us as uptowner.
Believe me, it wasn't personal.
Right. No, I'm not taking it
I'm
personal.
just making-
We're two people who see this incredible inequality, and we don't really know what to do about it other than move out of uptown. But I mean, what can we do?
Get involved. Get involved in the fight.
Where? I mean, we're new to the city too.
We have
so where?
actions all the time. You know, get involved in the fight. When we go down to city council, come down to city council with us. You know, because we do need diversity. We need other folk to come and say, this is wrong. Yeah, it's great, we have everything we need where we live at, but what about these folk over here? And the thing is, when the mayor said it was gonna be a New Orleans, and his focus was gonna be violent crime, well, the only way you're gonna get a handle on violent crime not happening in those so-called healthy areas of the city is to address the areas of the city that have not gotten the services and have not gotten recovery. So there are some good folk. I remember some years back when a group of folk in the corner were upset about the city putting dollars in the Waldenburg Park. The Lens did an article, and those folks said, instead of putting this money in the Waldenburg Park, put it into the Lower Ninth Ward. They need it more than we do. So you have folk out there that see the inequities, and we say, get involved in the fight. That's the only way it's gonna change.
There's no question, going around the room, if you look at the last 7 years, tremendous energy has come into this community, even though we're missing 100,000 people, from folks who've come with good spirits and are interested in being part of the recovery. This is an exciting city to live in now. It's in the balance, whether or not after hundreds of years along this river, there's going to be another couple of hundred years of what the future will look like. So in that sense, you can look at 25,000 people a year still volunteer on the St. Bernard Project. There's still hundreds and thousands who come in and help a community voice on every kind of thing, from dealing with these parks to helping build houses to whatever. And given the scarcity of resources, it's sweat equity that makes a huge difference. And sometimes, you talk to Vanessa, you hear about maybe it's age that happens or whatever. You start waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning. You're so mad you end up, she says, don't let me up near the computer and write emails at 4 in the morning because you don't want to see what the council people get at 4 in the morning email. She needs to have a whole shutdown time thing on that. But, do not wake this computer until 7. It's one of those sort of things. Lock it down. But there's part of what you miss in this story, and she's given so much of it, but NORD was a beloved city program. Now it is some kind of combination of quasi-public agency. This was supposed to bring business people in, private and public money. It's still, as it should be, under the control of elected officials like the mayor. But at the same time, it means, like the school system, it's yet another step removed from citizen accountability. So we have one thing after another where all these programs are clawed back, and it's like, people are familiar with the Lens. They have a project, and I don't know what support they have for this, of trying to monitor these charter school boards. What a farce that is. Most of them didn't even know they had to be public. Do we have to keep minutes? Do we really have to let people? This is what they were saying, and that's public money, and who does that research? So there's no day that. And I know the intern I was kidding about earlier, there's no day that people aren't coming in the office, coming in, helping figure out these bond issues. We're all way over our skill level here. So there's lots of places and lots of ways to get involved. Even, why would you? We've been talking about whether or not we should have a fair Grinds uptown, so we're not against the uptown. It's just.
I didn't feel it, but you call it out correctly.
In this city, it is. You never go to the West Bank. People don't uptown. The only thing that counts is where'd you go to high school. So there's a whole bunch of folkways we're all guilty about it. I couldn't tell you the last time I was on the West Bank.
I went to Belladonna about 2 weeks ago to get stuff for my face. So I go uptown, but it's just that,
You don't stay long, though.
No, well, it used to be, my folk used to tell me when we would ride down South Cleveland and we go uptown somewhere, they used to tell me, I hate to be in the vehicle with you because you start as soon as you get up here, you start talking, look at the corn, look at the grocery stores, you know, look at this and look at that, and we don't have this, we don't have that, you know, and it was like, couldn't we have just gone another way, you know, rather than riding through this area, you know, and you railing all the way to where we going, you know. But it's just the reality of it all, and the frustration level is just unreal. You know, and because I'm so close to all this, because I've been so involved for 7 years, you know, I mean, I'm not a computer literate person, but I've learned a lot over these 7 years. And yeah, like we said, I stay up until 2, 3 in the morning researching stuff, and I do send evil emails to people in City Hall, and they do tell me when I go to meet, oh, Ms. Gueringer, why do you send such evil emails? You know, I said, well, if it makes y'all move in the direction that you need to be going, then that's what I'm doing. You know, and the fact that you see the time is 3, 4 in the morning, you know, sometimes my 97-year-old mother gets up and she said, you still on this computer? When are you going to bed? You know, and then people calling me at 7 in the morning and I'm sounding like, hello, you know, because I'm worn out, you know. So, I mean, it's just constant, and people send me things anonymously. People send me information. FYI, they send it from their home computer. You know, I was told by some staff people in City Hall, the mayor said recently to some of them, if I ever find out who's feeding this garage information, you're going to be fired. You know, and I was like, what? Yeah, they actually called you out. You know, so the thing is, if it makes them move to do what's fair, what's equitable, what's just, what's right, then we all need to be doing. We all need to be hollering and screaming and pressing these people's buttons. You know, because what we need to understand is we put these people in office. We put these people in office and you don't hold them accountable. And they get in office and they get this greed and this power comes over them and they forget about, they lose sight of why they even were put there. But nobody likes to call people out, you know, and that's what needs to happen 24/7, you know.
And it shouldn't be just Ms. Gueringer,
Yes.
just Ms. Hester,
Right.
and my good friend was Asada. She didn't return to New Orleans after Katrina, but she was definitely before Ms. Hester at the school board meetings, Asada Olibala. And she was the first one to call me, I think in September after Katrina, to say, well, Usher got fortunate. That started the process of these schools being changed, public school system. Now, to give you a little historical context about the inequities, I'm from Uptown, and I could visually see the inequities. It's always been. It's just more in your face now. Because of the changes, there's so many changes to housing, to certain parts of the city that are getting funding for things that they don't even deserve to get, they're still getting it. But it's always been a difference in what Uptown, Garden District, and the French Quarter had as opposed to the rest of the city. No ifs, ands, and buts, and I'm 58 years old. It's clear as a bell. But it's just a sin and a shame that more people don't get involved so that she don't get picked upon as here comes trouble. Same way Asada did, and Ms. Hester was just arrested yesterday for speaking up. They wouldn't allow her to speak for more than 2 minutes in the first budget meeting. So she's right. You get civically engaged, go to meetings, do the research, find out why these and how these decisions are being made, what's being made, and get a group of people together that's going to fight it. And threaten these lawmakers. Okay, you can't take care of this, you can't grow a backbone and balls, well then you won't be reelected. Bye.
You know, become a member of a community voice. You know, but until we hold these people accountable, these battles are going to continue. And the thing is, it's about policy, you know, if you don't change policy, because these are kind of games that they play. You know, the policies that are written direct funding and services where they want it to go. So if you're not talking to your legislators or your council people and you're saying, look, I need you to do an ordinance, you know, to stop this or to make this happen. I need you to enact a policy so this money can be directed to where we feel it needs to go. You know, it's just like, I had the girl at Channel 4 interview me. She's doing a story on the tour buses that come to the lower line. Now there is an ordinance that says the tour buses are not supposed to be coming into the lower ninth ward at all. Yet the city has allowed these tour buses to come through our neighborhood 24/7. Still, okay? We've got calls for folks saying, my foundation is cracking, my walls are cracking, you know, yet most of these people pay as much as $50 or $60 a person to come and tour the lower ninth ward. And the thing about it is this, we're not getting a penny of this money, not a penny. So what revenue is being made is going into the city coffers. So when she interviewed me, I said, I want the city to penalize these tour companies, to pull their logs and penalize them for every trip that they ever made to the lower ninth ward. Now, whether we get any money out of it or not, so be it. But I had asked our councilperson to enact some sort of ordinance to capture some of those monies and put them into a pot to address various quality of life issues in our neighborhood. That didn't happen. So until we understand.
Can y'all go to the tour company and ask them for money?
That's a good idea.
You
Because
go
New
there
Orleans
and-
Tours and all those companies, it's a private operation.
Right, you do go to the tour.
I guess we could, but of course, you look to get pushback. You know, when you go to ask them for these monies, because from what I understand, I read an article some months back about a tour bus that came to the lower ninth ward. And a kid got on the bus selling pralines. Not one person on that bus bought a praline from that kid. Not one person. Yet they spent $50, $60 to come and do this tour. So those are the kinds of things that need to happen. The city needs to be held accountable. When there are ordinances on the books, they need to be adhered to. They just don't need to be, oh, we have an ordinance, but guess what? We're not going to worry about that ordinance. We're going to do what we want to do, where we want to do. You know, so those are the kinds of things that have to change. And it has to be all of us in this fight. You know, not just some of us. You know, because it affects us all. You know, but some people just don't get it. You know, when you have crime in Lakeview, and you had those home invasions in Lakeview, what was stripped out about it for me was that, okay, y'all have alarm systems, but because you're used to your neighborhood being a quote-unquote safe neighborhood, you don't turn the alarm system on. And then you wake up to some black person with a gun in your face that takes you to the ATM machine. Now, mind you, they bring you back home, they don't kill you, okay? Which is amazing.
I don't know where you're going with this one.
Which is amazing, because you know, if they take us, we dead, okay? We know we dead. Okay, what? You can identify, boom. You know, but I guess the rationale is, but if I kill a white person, I might go to jail for F. If I kill a black person, I might have served as much time. You know, so they brought him back to their home. It was amazing to them, just amazing.
It's another inequity.
You know what I mean? They're breaking in their cars. They leave their cars unlocked. Who leaves their car unlocked? You know, I'm making sure my alarm on every time I go in my front door. It's alarm on. You know, I get inside. I'm putting the alarm on. Bars on the windows. All kind of stuff. So because you live in a certain city and maybe before Katrina it was safe, it's not safe now. You know, so again, inequities persist all over the city. And they're all those steadfast people like myself and others that are fighting this fight, but it's not enough of us, and it needs to be all of us.
Well, I think people have to understand
It's
it actually takes a lot of time to come back from these disasters. We had the opportunity, some of us, to go to Kobe, Japan, which I guess it would now be almost 20 years ago, had the terrible earthquake and fires and whatever. We were there 2 years after Katrina, so that would be 17 years ago. And the good news was they were back up to the same population, but it took them 12 years. And, you know, we're all like abused children now. You say, that's good news. At least it only took 12 years, you know, and so that was actually a very helpful perspective at the 2-year mark. Well, if it takes another 10 years, and this is obviously the kind of foolhardy optimism that drives people like us, but the problem was, even though Japan approaches recovery totally differently than the United States, they immediately spent the money in the first 30 days, 60 days of diet, you know, appropriated the money. Here it took 9 to 12 months to actually get the first appropriations out of Congress. They immediately directed money to rebuilding housing for seniors and low-income folks, as opposed to here where 7 years on, we're still at the process of trying to rebuild some of the public housing and things like that. They still never could get poor people and elderly people back at the same numbers that left. Once they were gone, people had to make a life, find a job. You know, if you're old, hell, you're not going to come back if you're 50 miles away. Well, that was Japan. Here, we put people in the air. They're all over the world, and, you know, all over the United States now, so it's almost impossible to come back. Schools, if you have a job in Houston or Atlanta, you may come back to die here, but if you've got a job and the kids are in school, why would you come back necessarily? So I think it's hard for me to believe that in another 5 to 10 years we won't move the population up. I think we are making progress here. But whether or not the city is remarkably different than what it could be and should be, and this question of equity for everybody in New Orleans, those are very important issues. And when it comes to race and class and issues like that, we had a generation of African American empowerment politically here. It's not the case today. That doesn't say the mayor's a bad mayor or isn't better than Nagin or whatever else. That's a whole other issue. But these things do have a meaning if all of a sudden you have a city council for the first time in 30 years that's majority white. Well, what does that do in terms of a population in the city which is over 50% African American? Whole neighborhoods have flipped. Irish Channel, this neighborhood in Mid-City, the Bywater. 10 years ago, those neighborhoods, certainly the Bywater and Irish Channel, 30-35% white, mixed brown and black. Now, 70% white in Bywater. And you know, I live in the Bywater. It's an interesting neighborhood now. It was actually an interesting neighborhood 30 years ago when I moved in. But you know, it does change, and how that changes and what it attracts and how people move to make those communities vibrant and healthy, just like having meetings like this in Mid-City, where, you know, we're still holding on here to a very good, vibrant kind of community through fair grinds and other things. But, you know, you can see ghettos of the rich and more well-to-do, as well as ghettos of the poor, starting to develop in the city very rapidly.
But I know we have a lot more gentrification. I live in, and I hate to say this, I live in Holy Cross because, you know, I've always advocated that Lower 9 was Lower 9.
Right.
You know, but I definitely see a lot more gentrification in my neighborhood, and some folk are nice and some folk are not. You know, but you know, it's all right with me now. You know, the other side of the coin is, you know, you hear some folks saying, well, we got gentrification and we got more police presence than we ever had. You know, so, you know, you see those kind of differences being made in some areas of the city where You know, you had more blacks at one time, and now you have a mixture. You know, you have some issues with activists that were in some neighborhoods and they have more gentrification and have problems with the people, the white folks in the neighborhood that, you know, we have become actively involved, you know, because black folks are saying, well, we're here first, you know, and now you come in and you want to input your culture and how you think things should be, but we were here first. So, you know, you have clashes like that across the city also, you know, but,
Well, and there are gonna be more. I mean, the area between St. Claude and Claiborne in the upper ninth ward, which is never part of Bywater, and now you see these real estate people calling them the upper Bywater or whatever. What is an upper Bywater? You know, sort of like a desert, farther from the water, but that's an area where you can see a lot of gentrification starting to happen because people, you know, St. Claude's starting to really come back in a way that, you know, it hasn't in the last 30 years, and you're gonna see housing values come up, and nobody can afford to, you know, look at all, if people saw the front page of the paper, look at all the lines of people trying to protest their assessments on their housing. I mean, we have a smaller city with huge public works demands, and property taxes are going through the roof. So what does it take to get a house?
Uptown, you had whites wanting to buy cheap property even before Katrina.
Sure you did.
Much more so now.
It's a newer phenomenon downtown.
And I've moved, my brother and I bought a house half a block off of North Broad, Jerusalem, between La Rouge, Dergeois, La Harpe, and North Broad. And it was terrible in the sense that there was always shooting. You were always hearing about the 7th Ward on the news, and now you don't because you do have more whites moving in the neighborhood. I guess they want to be close to the Jazz Fest. But we definitely have more whites. And assume that, as you said, Vanessa, you have more police presence, which we do. We always see the cop cars, and whites aren't afraid to call and communicate with the police. So a lot of the shooting and car stealing have gone down.
It's an effective treatment too, right?
Yeah, there's controversy because I'm in the 7th Ward Neighborhood Association, and they say we're split between 3 different districts. And that's crazy.
Right.
And the last piece I want to say is our pool here, Stallings, was cracked and leaking for the longest. On this summer, they finally got it together, and I think it still leaks along La Perouse.
okay.
But the kids were still able to swim this summer.
Good.
We've had some playground equipment installed, but Mama D fights it because she said the whole ambiance of the park is changing with the whites moving in and want this and want that in the park as opposed to the way it was.
Right.
And you can't assume just because blacks are there playing basketball that there's drug dealing going on.
Right.
So it's just the last piece I want to share is a young lady, newly married, another social studies teacher who evacuated to Houston, and she chose not to return because she said, I can see where my tax dollars go in Houston as opposed to here where she was own a home and a teacher as well. And I know a lot of poor people cannot return. People who did not own their homes and who have low income or
Health
poor
problems.
cannot return.
Right.
Terrible.
Well, with no rent control,
Exactly.
who can afford the rent if you can't get a job? If you're gonna get a minimum wage job, you're gonna have to get 2 or 3 jobs just to pay the rent, just to survive. You know, and if you got kids, then you gotta take care of those kids.
Some of my kids that I taught at Douglas came back without parents and they were homeless. I had an AB student, and I don't give A's out generously. And suddenly she stopped coming, and when I questioned her, she said, well, me and my sister are homeless. And Covenant House forces us to go out and look for work during, and I'm like, during school hours? And she said, yes, we have to leave and be out by 9, go and look for work. That's horrible.
It is.
You're closing down mental health facilities. You don't have affordable housing. So you're
Right.
asking for trouble, like you
Yeah.
said, excuse me, the crime is gonna go
Yeah,
up.
yeah, and a lot of these kids, when you look at the ages of these kids that's committing these crimes, they came back and they stood in those trailers by themselves.
Yes.
You know, so there was no structure there. Those parents didn't come back, they stood away, they worked or whatever they did. So you had a lot of kids came back and they were basically on their own.
And a lot of it wasn't addressed in the schools. I know in Frederick Douglass, our first year, the kids had frozen sandwiches for lunch. You had 16 security guards, but 1 social worker. When that child told me she was homeless, at that moment, I wanted to cry and wish that I was a social worker instead of a teacher. You know, you just had no way to address all of the needs of the children.
Yeah.
And then with the influx of TFAs, that's what we call Teach for America. Of course, these people also needing housing and
You're right.
and so on and so forth. So yes, the whole racial complexion is changing in New Orleans. And some of my kids, I volunteered once I retired through the Liberty Kitchen program, which does lunch, breakfast, and snacks and college prep in the form of Sylvania Williams. And some of the Gregory kids, Ms. Adams, we miss you. These people don't understand us. They write us up for everything. But if you write these kids up for everything, you're suspending them, you're putting them out. You're asking for more trouble too.
That's too military.
What I said though, the parents, what gets me, you know, the parents are not taking enough of a stand. You know, I know if it was my kid that had come back to this system, this fragmented system, I would be absolutely outraged. Outraged, because
Instead of being as mellow as you are now.
oh,
I
We
can just
stay up
imagine.
till 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
absolutely outraged, you know. I mean, it's so many things with the schools too. And what upset me, one of the things that upset me, all the schools have been renamed. All the schools that were named, all our history has been absolutely erased. You know, and the thing is, schools, neighborhood schools, high schools, unlike colleges in the city, was a big thing. You know, people to join saying, oh, I graduated from Carl. I graduated from Clark, you know. And I mean, the bands at these schools, you know. So I mean, everybody had this kinship, this amazing, you know, just camaraderie around these schools that they attended, you know, and all that pretty much has been erased. The schools have been named for these charter operators.
Is it
Well, it's a
true?
whole different world. I mean, I have a new dog I got in December, and I had all these white hard balls in the yard, and I couldn't figure out who were neighbors walking by and you know what? It took me forever to figure out those are lacrosse balls. Over there in the Douglas yard, we're close to Douglas, they're playing lacrosse there. Of all the things you can imagine, I guess those are the things